announcements. Let me with the appropriate beginning to everything. Welcome to Storytime with Sin. This is part two of A Christmas Carol, part two of two. I would like to encourage folks to get their cozy on during this time. Wrap up in your favorite blankets. Get your favorite warm beverage. Your favorite pillow, squishable, squishy animal friend, squishy human friend. I mean, I don't judge. Uh, and feel free to relax and listen. If you are in a climate where it is not so mildly cold or even chilly, uh, prop you up a fan and pretend, and still go along with all the provisos and quid pro quos of a cozy evening at home, listening to some good reading. And also, to as a fair advisement, uh, the sound effects and blurbs are disabled for the screen. However, the Twitch alerts are not. So if you're watching and not followed, or you would like to subscribe, please hold off and do so until we actually switch over to the game mode. I would really appreciate it and would keep the flow of the conversation going. But feel free to speak in the chat, and that is completely okay. I'm okay with that, but also I'm completely okay with folks lurking and listening as well. Now that we have all the provisos and quid pro quos out of the way, we can begin. And we begin with Stave 4, The Last of the Spirits, which is my personal favorite because I actually played that in a version of the Christmas Carol. Easiest part ever. Let me get. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which the spirit moved seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible, save one outstretched hand. But for this it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night and separate it from the darkness by which it was surrounded. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. "I'm in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come," said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with his hand. "You're about to show me shadows of the things that have not happened but will happen in the time before us," Scrooge pursued. "Is that so, spirit?" The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit had inclined its head. That was the only answer he received. Although well used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it. The spirit paused a moment, as if observing his condition and giving him time to recover. But Scrooge was all the worse for this. It thrilled him with a vague, uncertain horror to know that behind the dusky shroud there were ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him, while he, though he stretched his own to the utmost, could see nothing but a spectral hand and one great heap of black. "Ghost of the future!" he exclaimed, "I fear you more than any spectre I have seen, but as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear your company and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?" It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them. "Lead on," said Scrooge. "Lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know. Lead on, spirit." The phantom moved away as it had come toward him. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up, he thought, and carried him along. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them, and encompass them of its own act. But they were in the heart of it, on change amongst the merchants, who hurried up and down and chinked the money in their pockets, and conversed in groups, and looked at their watches, and trifled thoughtfully with their great gold seals, and so forth, as Scrooge had seen them often. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen. Observing the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. "No," said a great fat man with a monstrous chin, "I don't know much about it either way. I only know that he's dead." When did he die? Inquired another. Last night, I believe. Why, what was the matter with him? Asked the third, taking a vast quantity of snuff out of a very large snuff box. I thought he would never die. God knows, said the first with a yawn. What has he done with his money? Asked the red-faced gentleman with a pendulous excrescence on the end of his nose that shook like the gills of a turkey cock. I haven't heard, said the man with the large chin, yawning again. Left it to its company, perhaps, but he hasn't left it to me. That's all I know. This pleasantry was received with a general laugh. It's likely to be a cheap funeral, said the same speaker, for upon my life I don't know of anybody to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer. I don't mind going if a lunch is provided, observed the gentleman with the excrescence on his nose, but I must be fed if I make one. Another laugh. Well, I'm most disinterested amongst you after all, said the first speaker, for I will never wear black gloves and I never eat lunch, but I'll offer to go if anybody else will. When I come to think of it, I'm not at all sure that I wasn't his most particular friend, for he used to stop and speak whenever we met. Bye-bye. Speakers and listeners strolled away and mixed with other groups. Scrooge knew the men and looked toward the spirits for an explanation. The phantom glided into a street, its finger pointing to two persons meeting. Scrooge listened again, thinking that the explanation might lie here. He knew these men also perfectly. They were men of business, very wealthy, and of great importance. He had made a point of always standing well in their esteem in a business point of view. That is, strictly in a business point of view. How are you? Said one. How are you? Returned the other. Well, I said first. Old Scratch has got his own at last, eh? So I'm told, returned the second. Cold, isn't it? Seasonable for Christmas time. You're not a skater, I suppose. No. Something else to think of. Good morning. Not another word. That was their meeting, their conversation, and their parting. Scrooge was at first inclined to be surprised that the spirit should attach importance to conversations apparently so trivial. But feeling assured that they must have some hidden purpose, he set himself to consider what it was likely to be. They could scarcely be supposed to have had any bearing on the death of Jacob, his old partner, for that was past, and this ghost province was the future. Nor could he think of any one immediately connected with himself to whom he could apply them. But nothing doubting that to whomsoever they applied, they had some latent moral for his own improvement. He resolved to treasure up every word he heard and everything he saw, and especially to observe the shadow of himself when it appeared. For he had an expectation that the content of his future self would give him the clue he missed, and it would render the solution of these riddles easy. He looked about in that very place for his own image, but another man stood in his accustomed corner, and though the clock pointed to his usual time of day for being there, he saw no likeness of himself among the multitudes that poured in through the porch. It gave him a little surprise, however, for he had been resolving in his mind a change of life, and thought and hoped he saw his newborn resolutions carried out in this. Quiet and dark beside him stood the phantom with its outstretched hand. When he roused himself from his thoughtful quest, he fancied from the turn of the hand its situation in reference to himself, that the unseen eyes were looking at him keenly. It made him shudder and feel very cold. They left the busy scene and went into an obscure part of town where Scrooge had never penetrated before, although he recognized its situation and its bad repute. The ways were foul and narrow, the shops and houses wretched, the people half-naked, drunken, slipshod, ugly. Sounds like some places I've been. Alleys and archways, like so many cesspools, disgorged their fences of smell and dirt and life upon the straggling streets, and the whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth and misery. Far in this den of infamous resort there was a low-browed beetling shop below a penthouse roof, where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. Upon the floor within were piled heaps of rusty keys, nails, chains, hinges, files, scales, weights, and refuse iron of all kinds. Secrets that a few would like to scrutinize were bred and hidden in mountains of unseemly rags, masses of corrupted fat, and sepulchres of bones. Sitting in among the wares he dealt with by a charcoal stove made of old bricks was a gray-haired rascal nearly 70 years of age, who had screened himself from the cold air by a frosy curtaining of miscellaneous tatters, hung upon a line and smoked his pipe in all the luxury of calm retirement. Scrooge and the Phantom came into the presence of this man just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop. But she had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in too, and she was closely followed by a man in faded black who was no less startled by the sight of them than they had been upon the recognition of each other. After a short period of blank astonishment in which the old man with the pipe had joined them, they all three burst into a laugh. "Let the charwoman alone to be first," cried she who had entered first. "Let the laundress alone to be the second, and let the undertaker's man alone to be the third. Look here, old Joe, here's a chance, if we haven't all three met here without meaning it." "You couldn't have met in a better place," said old Joe, removing his pipe from his mouth. "Come into the parlor. You were made free of it long ago, you know. And the other two ain't strangers. Stop till I shut the door of the shop. Had Scrooge. There aren't such a rusty bit of metal in the place as its own hinges, I believe, and I'm sure there's no such old bones here as mine. We're all suitable to our calling. We're well matched. Come into the parlor. Come into the parlor." The parlor was the space behind the screen of rags. The old man raked the fire together with an old stair rod, and having trimmed his smoky lamp, for it was night, with the stem of his pipe, put it into his mouth again. While he did this, the woman who had already spoken threw her bundle on the floor and sat down in a flaunting manner on a stool, crossing her elbows on her knees, and looking with a bold defiance at the other two. "What odds, then? What odds, Miss Dilber?" said the woman. "Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did." "That's true, indeed," said the laundress. "No man more so." "Why, then, don't stand there staring as if you were afraid, woman. Who's the wiser? We're not going to pick holes in each other's coats, I suppose." "No, indeed," said Miss Dilber and the man together. "We should hope not." "Very well, then," cried the woman. "That's enough. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose." "No, indeed," said Miss Dilber, laughing. "If he wanted to keep 'em after he was dead, a wicked old screw," pursued the woman, "why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have had somebody to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying gasping out his last there alone by himself." "It is the truest word that was ever spoke," said Miss Dilber. "It's a judgment on him." "I wish it was a little heavier judgment," replied the woman. "It should have been, you may depend upon it. And if I could have laid my hands on anything else. Open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it. Speak out plain. I'm not afraid to be the first, nor afraid for them to see it. We knew pretty well that we were helping ourselves before we met here. I believe it's no sin. Open the bundle, Joe." But the gallantry of her friends would not allow of this, and the man in faded black, mounting the breach, first produced his plunder. It was not extensive. A seal or two, a pencil case, a pair of sleeve buttons, and a brooch of no great value were all. They were severely examined and appraised by old Joe, who chalked the sums he was disposed to give for each upon the wall, and added them up into a total when he found that there was nothing more to come. "That's your account," said Joe, "and I wouldn't give another sixpence if I was to be boiled for not doing it. Who's next?" Mrs. Dilber was next. Sheets and towels, a little wearing apparel, 2 old-fashioned silver teaspoons, a pair of sugar tongs, and a few boots. Her account was stated on the wall in the same manner. "I always give too much to ladies. It's a weakness of mine. That's the way I ruined myself," said old Joe. "That's your account. If you asked me for another penny and made an open question, I'd repent of being so liberal and knock off a half a crown." "Now undo my bundle, Joe," said the first woman. Joe went down on his knees for the greater convenience of opening it, and having unfastened a great many knots, dragged out a large heavy roll of some dark stuff. "What do you call this?" said Joe. "Bed curtains?" "Ah!" returned the woman, laughing and leaning forward on her crossed arms. "Bed curtains! You don't mean to say you took them down, rings and all, with him lying there?" said Joe. "Yes, I do," replied the woman. "Why not?" "You were born to make your fortune," said Joe, "and you certainly do it." "I certainly shan't hold my hand when I can get anything in it by reaching it out, for the sake of such a man as he was. I promise you, Joe," returned the woman coolly. "Don't drop that all upon the blankets now." "His blankets?" asked Joe. "Who else's, do you think?" replied the woman. "He isn't likely to take cold without him, I dare say." "I hope he didn't die of anything catching, huh?" said old Joe, stopping in his work and looking up. "Don't you be afraid of that," returned the woman. "I ain't so fond of his company that I'd lord it about him for such things if he did. Ah, you may look through that shirt to your eyes' but you won't find a hole in it nor a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me." "What do you call wasting of it?" asked old Joe. "Putting it on him to be buried, to be sure," replied the woman with a laugh. "Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again. If calico ain't good enough for such a purpose, it isn't good enough for anything. It's quite as becoming to the body. He can't look uglier than he did in that one." Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror. As they sat grouped about their spoil in the scanty light afforded by the old man's lamp, he viewed them with a detestation and disgust, which could hardly have been greater, though they had been obscene demons marketing the corpse itself. "Ha ha!" laughed the same woman when old Joe was producing a flannel bag with money in it, told out their several gains upon the ground. "This is the end of it, you see. He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive to profit us when he was dead." "Spirit," said Scrooge, shuddering from head to foot. I see. This case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heaven, what is this?" Take a drink. He recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed. And now he almost touched a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, they lay something covered up, which, though it was dumb, announced itself in awful language. The room was very dark, too dark to be observed with any accuracy, though Scrooge glanced around in obedience to a secret impulse, anxious to know what kind of room it was. A pale light rising in the outer air fell straight upon the bed, and on it, plundered and bereft, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this man. Scrooge glanced toward the phantom. Its steady hand was pointed to the head. The cover was so carelessly adjusted that the slightest raising of it, the motion of a finger upon Scrooge's part, would have disclosed the face. He thought of it, felt how easy it would be to do, and longed to do it, but he had no more power to withdraw the veil and dismiss the spectre at his side. "O cold, cold, rigid, dreadful death, set thine altar here, and dress it with such terrors as thou hast at thy command, for this is thy dominion. But if the loved, revered, and honored head, thou canst not turn one hair to thy dread purpose, or make one feature odious. It is not the hand that is heavy and will fall down when released. It is not that the heart and pulse are still, but that the hand was open, generous, and true, the heart brave, warm, and tender, and the pulse a man's. Strike, shadow, strike, and see his good deeds springing from the wound to sow the world with life immortal." No voice pronounced these words in Scrooge's ears, and yet he heard them when he looked upon the bed. He thought, if this man could be raised up now, what would be his foremost thoughts? Avarice, hard-dealing, griping cares. They have brought him to a rich end, truly. He lay in the dark, empty house with not a man, a woman, nor a child to say he was kind to me in this or that, and for the memory of one kind word I will be kind to him. A cat was tearing at the door, and there was a sound of gnawing rats beneath the hearthstone. What they wanted in the room of death, and why they were so restless and disturbed, Scrooge did not dare to think. "Spirit," he said, "this is a fearful place, and leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson. Trust me, let us go." Still the ghost pointed with an unmoving finger to the head. "I understand you," Scrooge returned, "and I would do it if I could, but I have not the power, Spirit. I have not the power." Again it seemed to look upon him. "If there is any person in town who feels emotion caused by this man's death," said Scrooge, quite agonized, "show that person to me, Spirit. I beseech you." The phantom spread its dark robe before him for a moment, like a wing, and withdrawing it revealed a room by daylight where a mother and her children were. She was expecting someone, and with anxious eagerness, for she walked up and down the room, started at every sound, looked out from the window, glanced at the clock, tried, but in vain, to work with her needle, and could hardly bear the voices of her children in their play. At length the long-expected knock was heard. She hurried to the door and met her husband, a man whose face was careworn and depressed, though he was young. There was a remarkable expression in it now, and a kind of serious delight of which he felt ashamed and which he struggled to repress. He sat down to the dinner that had been hoarding for him by the fire, and when she asked him faintly what news, which was not until after a long silence, he appeared embarrassed how to answer. "Is it good," she said, "or bad? To help him?" "Bad," he answered. "We are quite ruined?" "No, there is hope yet, Caroline." "If he relents," she said, amazed. "There is. Nothing is past hope if such a miracle has happened." "He is past relenting," said her husband. "He is dead." She was a mild and patient creature, if her face spoke truth. But she was thankful in her soul to hear it, and she said so with clasped hands. She prayed forgiveness the next moment, and was sorry, but the first was the emotion of her heart. "What the half-drunken woman whom I told you of last night said to me when I tried to see him and obtain a week's delay in what I thought was a mere excuse to avoid me, turns out to have been quite true. He was not only very ill, but dying then." "To whom will our debt be transferred?" "I don't know, but before that time we shall be ready with the money, and even though we are not, it would be bad fortune indeed to find such a merciless a creditor in his successor. We may sleep tonight with light hearts, Caroline." Yes, softened as they would, their hearts were lighter. The children's faces, hushed and clustered around to hear what they so little understood, were brighter, and it was a happier house for this man's death. The only emotion that the ghost could show him caused by the event was one of pleasure. "Let me see some tenderness connected with a death," said Scrooge, "or that dark chamber spirit which we just left just now will forever be present to me." The ghost conducted him through several streets familiar to his feet, and as they went along, Scrooge looked here and there to find himself, but nowhere was he to be seen. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and children seated around the fire. Quiet, very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner, and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in sewing, but surely they were very quiet. "And he took a child and set him amidst them, and set him in the midst of them." Where had Scrooge heard those words? He had not dreamed them. The boy must have read them out as the spirit crossed the threshold. Why did he not go on? The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face. "The color hurts my eyes," she said. "The color, oh, poor Tiny Tim." "They're better now again," said Cratchit's wife. "It makes them weak by candlelight, and I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time." "Past it, rather," Peter answered, shutting up his book. "But I think he has walked a little slower than he used to these last few evenings, Mother." They were very quiet again, and at last she said in a steady, cheerful voice that only faltered once, "I have known him to walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder very fast indeed." "So have I," cried Peter. "Often." "So have I," exclaimed another, "and so had all." "But he was very light to carry," she resumed, intent upon her work, "and his father loved him so there was no trouble, no trouble. And there is your father at the door." She hurried out to meet him, and little Bob and his comforter, he had need of it, poor fellow, came in. His tea was ready for him on the hob, and they all tried who should help him to it most. Then the two young Cratchits got upon his knees and laid each child a little cheek against his face, as if they said, "Don't mind it, father, don't be grieved." Bob was very cheerful with them, and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He looked at the work upon the table, and praised the industry and speed of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls. They would be done long before Sunday, he said. "Sunday you went today, then, Robert?" said his wife. "Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is, but you'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there on a Sunday. My little child," cried Bob. "My little child." He broke down all at once. He couldn't help it. If he could have helped it, he and his child would have been farther apart, perhaps, than they were. He left the room and went upstairs into the room above, which lighted cheerfully and hung with Christmas. There was a chair set close beside the child, and there were signs of someone having been there lately. Poor Bob sat down in it, and when he had thought a little and composed himself, he kissed the little face. He was reconciled to what had happened and went down again quite happy. They drew about the fire and talked, the girls and mother working still. Bob told him of the extraordinary kindness of Mr. Scrooge's nephew, whom he had scarcely seen but once, and who, meeting him in the street that day and seeing that he looked just a little down, said Bob, inquired what had happened to distress him. On which, said Bob, for he is the pleasantest spokenest gentleman you ever heard, I told him, I'm heartily sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit, he said, and I'm heartily sorry for your good wife. By the by, how did he ever know that? I don't know. Knew what, my dear? Why, that you were a good wife, replied Bob. Everybody knows that, said Peter. Well observed, boy, cried Bob. I hope they do. Heartily sorry, he said, for your good wife, and if I can be of service to you in any way, he said, giving me his card, that's where I live. Pray come to me. Pray come to me. Now it wasn't, cried Bob, for the sake of anything he might be able to do for us, so much as for his kind way. This was quite delightful. It really seemed as if he had known our Tiny Tim and felt with us. I'm sure he's a good soul, said Miss Cratchit. You would be sure of it, my dear, returned Bob. If you saw and spoke to him, I shouldn't be at all surprised. Mark what I say. If he got Peter a better situation. I'll get right in a minute. Only hear that, Peter, said Miss Cratchit. And then, cried one of the girls, Peter will be keeping company with someone and sitting up for himself. Get along with you, retorted Peter, grinning. It's just as likely as not, said Bob. One of these days, though there's plenty of time for that, my dear. But, however, whenever we part from one another, I am sure that we shall none of us forget poor Tiny Tim. Shall we, or this first parting that there was among us? Never, father, cried Al. And I know, said Bob, I know, my dears, that when we recollect how patient and how mild he was, although he was a little child, we shall not quarrel easily among ourselves and forget poor Tiny Tim in doing it. No, never, father, they all cried again. I am very happy, said little Bob. I am very happy. Miss Cratchit kissed him, his daughters kissed him, the two young Cratchits kissed him, and Peter himself shook hands. Spirit of Tiny Tim, thy childish essence was from God. Spectre, said Scrooge, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what man that was whom we saw lying dead. The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him, as before, though at a different time, he thought. Indeed, there seemed to be no order in these latter visions, save that they were in the future, into the resorts of business men, but showed him not himself. Indeed, the spirit did not stay for anything, but went straight on as to the end just now desired, until besought by Scrooge to tarry for a moment. This court, said Scrooge, though which we hurry now, is where my place of occupation is, and has been for a length of time. I see the house. Let me behold what I shall be in days to come. The spirit stopped. The hand was pointed elsewhere. The house is yonder, Scrooge exclaimed. Why do you point away? The inexorable figure... Give me a second. I need to take a drink. The inexorable finger underwent no change. Scrooge hastened to the window of his office and looked in. It was an office still, but not his. The furniture was not the same, and the figure in the chair was not himself. The phantom pointed as before. He joined it once again, and wondering why and whither he had gone, accompanying it till they reached an iron gate. He paused to look around before entering. A churchyard. Here, then, the wretched man, whose name he had now to learn, lay underneath the ground. It was a worthy place, walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds, the growth of vegetation's death, not life, choked up with too much burying, fat with repleted appetite. A worthy place. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. He advanced toward it trembling. The phantom was exactly as it had been, but he dreaded that he saw no meaning in its solemn shape. Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, said Scrooge, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of things that will be, or are they the shadows of the things that may be only? Still the ghost pointed downward to the grave by which it stood. Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends to which, if it persevered, and they must lead, said Scrooge. But if the courses are departed from, the ends will change. Say it thus with what you show me. The spirit was as immovable as ever. Scrooge crept toward it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Am I that man who lay upon the bed? He cried upon his knees. The finger pointed from the grave to him and back again. No, spirit, no, no, no. The finger was still there. Spirit, he cried, tight clutching at its rope. Hear me, I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been but for this intercourse. Why show me this if I am past all hope? For the first time the hand appeared to shake. Good spirit, he pursued, as down upon the ground he fell before it. Your nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. The kind hand trembled. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone. In his agony, he caught the spectral hand. It sought to free itself, but he was strong in his entreaty and detained it. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. Holding up his hands in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. And we will begin stave 5 right after the ad break, because apparently Twitch is very determined to give me an ad break. Because it said, yeah. Apparently. So, we're going to take a pause right here for the cause and wait for that to subside. I hope everybody's having a good Wednesday. I apologize if you hear River in the background. She is fine. She's just having a little cabin fever because the whole situation is that I have an exterminator come every Wednesday when I'm home, and he sprays, and everything's safe after about an hour to 2 hours for them to actually get around and walk around the house. But it really sucks for her because her food, her water, everything's outside the room, and while she's fine, sometimes she panics a little bit about, she hates being enclosed. And as much as I try to be compassionate and caring, she still doesn't seem to understand that she can't be out there with it still wet because I don't want her to get sick or possibly even. Now, once it's dry, it's fine. It's good. It's okay. But she doesn't seem to understand that I'm trying to protect her. And we'll probably get this done in record time because this is also. I think the longest bit is the bit when you establish everything, and then once you get into the spirits, it kind of. And if you notice that as I've read it, Scrooge's voice has gone from crotchety and gravelly and old to a more stronger, more vibrant turn. And that's on purpose, not just because it fucks my voice up, but it's also because it's an evolution. So by the time he's hitting the Ghost of Christmas Present, he's starting to sound a little more like his old self, and like the person he should be as opposed to the person he became. I'm showing his evolution through the change in my voice, because you notice when he makes the plea to the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, he is a lot stronger in his convictions and a lot stronger in his spirit. When Marley first talks to him, he's old, he's crotchety, he's against everything, and so therefore, you know, he does. They don't want to. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to change at that juncture. So, the old crotchety voice slowly becomes a stronger, more statesman-like voice, and you'll hear that in the last stab. So, it's me trying to put a new spin on an old story. And if you notice, I've been doing the narration almost in a Raymond Reddington voice. I've been trying to flex the acting chops during this entire situation because I could read this just verbatim and it'd be okay, but it's so dull that way. So you know, I would rather put some life to it and make it more enjoyable. Um, will this be a shorter stream? I might end up being a shorter stream because of some stuff that happened last night. Um, I'm going to be completely transparent and say I am tired. I had a rough night's sleep last night, and I am not 100%. But I wanted to present this story and still enjoy myself. So, yay! I can't believe it started taking almost 45 minutes. And like I said, this is the final step. This is the end of it, as they call it. So, I knew it wasn't going to be a very long do. But I am. Oh, that reminds me. Now that I think about it. Oop. I almost forgot about something. Burp, burp. Hang on. Where did I put it? Because I know that I put it somewhere. Ah! I was picturing myself. Uh. Oh, no, not that. This. Okay. This is. I also have an additional something to read to you guys after I'm through with this because uh, I also had a twisted. Twas the night before Christmas, but I can't read it on stream because it's very, very bad. um, but well, I mean, any poem that ends "fuck you all and have a hell of a night" is yeah, you can't really can't really read that on stream. But my mother and I used to have a tradition where we would read that to end the night. And we read this excerpt, and I'll get to explaining that in just a moment. But now, welcome back from the ad break. For those of you on Twitch, for those of you on YouTube, you just had a very pleasant interlude. The end of it. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all the time before him was his own to make amends in. I will live in the past, the present, and the future, Scrooge repeated as he scrambled out of bed. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. Oh, Jacob Marley, heaven and Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, oh Jacob, on my knees. And don't you dare take that out of context. He was so fluttered and so glowing with his good intentions that his broken voice would scarcely answer to his call. He had been sobbing violently in his conflict with the spirit, and his face was wet with tears. "They are not torn down," cried Scrooge, folding one of his bed curtains in his arms. "They are not torn down, rings and all. They are here. I am here. The shadows of the things that would may have been, the shadows of the things that may have been may be dispelled. They will be. I know they will." His hands were busy with his garments all this time, turning them inside out, putting them on upside down, tearing them and slaying them, making them parties to every kind of extravagance. "I don't know what to do," cried Scrooge, laughing and crying in the same breath, and making a perfect cocoon of himself with his stockings. "I am light as a feather. I am happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy. I am as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody, and a Happy New Year to all the world. Hello here. Whoo, hello." He had frisked into the sitting room and was now standing there perfectly winded. "There's the saucepan that the gruel was in," cried Scrooge, starting off again and going around the fireplace. "There's the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. There's the corner where the ghost of Christmas present sat. There's the window where I saw the wandering spirits. It's all right. It's all true. It all happened." Really, for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh, a most illustrious laugh, a father of a long line of brilliant laughs. I don't know what day of the month it is, said Scrooge. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind. I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. He was checked in his transports by the churches ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Clash, clash, hammer, ding, dong, bell, bell, dong, ding, hammer, clash, clash. Oh, glorious, glorious. Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist, clear, bright, jovial, stirring, cold and cold, piping for the blood to dance to. Golden sunlight, heavenly sky, sweet fresh air, merry bells. Oh, glorious, glorious. What's today? Cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes who perhaps had loitered in to look about him. Eh? Returned the boy with all his might of wonder. What's today, my fine fellow? Said Scrooge. Today? Replied the boy. Why, Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day, Scrooge said. I haven't missed it. The spirits are all done it in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow. Hello, returned the boy. Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one at the corner? Scrooge inquired. I should hope I did, replied the lad. An intelligent boy, said Scrooge. A remarkable boy. Do you know whether they sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one. What, the one as big as me, returned the boy. What a delightful boy, said Scrooge. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck. It's hanging there now, replied the boy. Is it? Said Scrooge. Go and buy it. What? Exclaimed the boy. No, said Scrooge. I'm in earnest. Go and buy it. Tell it to bring it here, that I may give them directions to where to take it. Come back with the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown. The boy was off like a shot. He must have had a steady hand at a trigger who could have got a shot off that half as fast. I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's, whispered Scrooge, rubbing his hands and splitting with a laugh. He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Pt2. Joe Miller never made such a joke as sending it to Bob's will be. The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did somehow, and went downstairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. As he stood there waiting his arrival, the knocker caught his eye. I shall love it as long as I live, cried Scrooge, patting it with his hands. I scarcely ever looked at it before. What an onyx expression it has in its face. It's a wonderful knocker. Ah, here's the turkey. Hello, how are you? Merry Christmas. And it was a turkey. He could never have stood up on his legs, that bird. He would have snapped them short off in a minute like sticks of sealing wax. Why, it's impossible to carry that to Camden Town, said Scrooge. You've got to have a cab. Paraphrase a little bit, sorry. The chuckle with which he said this, and the chuckle for which he paid for the turkey, and the chuckle with which he paid for the cab, and the chuckle with which he recompensed the boy, were only to be exceeded by the chuckle with which he sat down breathless in his chair again and chuckled till he cried. Shaving was not an easy task, for his hand continued to shake very much, and shaving requires attention, even when you don't dance while you're at it. But if he had cut off the end of his nose, he would have put a piece of sticking plaster over it and been quite satisfied. He dressed himself all in his best and at last got out into the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present. And walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded every one with a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said, Good morning, sir, Merry Christmas to you. And Scrooge said often afterwards, of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, those were the blithest in his ears. He had not gone far when, coming on toward him, he beheld the portly gentleman who had walked into his counting-house the day before and said, Scrooge or Marley, I believe. It sang a pang across his heart to think how this old gentleman looked upon him when they met. But he knew what path lay straight before him, and he took it. My dear sir, said Scrooge, quickening his pace and taking the old gentleman by both his hands, how do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you. A Merry Christmas to you, sir. Mr. Scrooge? Yes, said Scrooge, that's my name, and I fear it might not be pleasant to you. Allow me to ask your pardon. And will you have the goodness... Here Scrooge whispered in his ear. Lord bless me, cried the gentleman, as if his breath were taken away. My dear Scrooge, are you serious? If you please, said Scrooge, not a farthing less, and a great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favour? My dear sir, said the other, shaking hands with me, I don't know what to say to such magnificence. Don't say anything, please, retorted Scrooge. Come and see me. Will you come and see me? I will, cried the old gentleman, and he was clear he meant to do it. Thank you, said Scrooge. I'm much obliged to you. Thank you 50 times. Bless you. He went to the church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro and patted the children on the head and questioned beggars and looked down to the kitchens of houses and up to the windows and found that everything could yield him pleasure. He had never dreamed at any walk that anything could give him so much happiness. In the afternoon he turned his steps toward his nephew's house. He had passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock, but he made a dash and did it. "Is your master home, my dear?" said Scrooge to the girl. "Very nice girl, very nice girl." "Yes, sir." "Where he is, my love?" said Scrooge. "He's in the dining room, sir, along with the mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please." "Thank you, he knows me," said Scrooge, his hand already on the dining room lock. "I'll go in here, my dear." He turned it gently and sidled his face around the door. They were looking at the table, which was spread out in great array, for these young housekeepers were always nervous on such points, and liked to see everything as right. "Fred!" said Scrooge. Dear heart alive, how his niece by marriage started. Scrooge had forgotten for the moment about her sitting in the corner with the footstool, or he wouldn't have done it on any account. "Why, bless my soul," cried Fred, "who is that?" "It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?" Let him in? It is a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. His niece looked just the same. So did Topper when he came. So did the plump sister when she came. So did everyone when they came. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. That was the thing he had his heart set upon. And he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9, no Bob. 1/4 past, no Bob. He was full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open, that he might see him come into the tank. His hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen, as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock. "Hello," growled Scrooge in his accustomed voice, as near as he could feign it. "What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?" "I'm very sorry, sir," said Bob. I am behind my time." "You are," repeated Scrooge. "I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please." "It's only once a year, sir," pleaded Bob, appearing from the tank. "It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir." "I'll tell you what, my friend," said Scrooge. "I'm not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. Therefore," he continued, leaping from his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again, "and therefore I'm about to raise your salary." Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. He had a momentary idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him, and calling to the people in the court for help in a strait waistcoat. "A Merry Christmas, Bob," said Scrooge with an earnestness that could not be mistaken, as he clapped him on the back. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family. And we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle for you before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more, and to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man in the good city as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good at which some people did not have their fill of laughter at the outset, and knowing such as these would be blind anyway. He thought it quite well that they should wrinkle up their eyes and grins as have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. That may that be truly said of us and all of us, and so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. The end. I told you. That was it. So, and thus ends the Christmas Carol for this year. Now, I am going to read this right quick. And actually, we may even get started early on The may get started early on the Dreamlight Valley stuff. Actually, my mother, Lord bless her soul, used to, like I said, we used to end out with that janky "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," and we also read, because she was an English major, and took Latin and what have you. She taught me about books. I mean, she read to me ever since I was old enough to even be around. I think she even read to me in the womb, to be truthful, long before it was cool. And she taught me the wonderful world of proofreading, of syntax, and all that before I even went to school. I was reading on third grade level before I even entered kindergarten, just saying. But anyway, I know that people out there have been through school. You know about essays, you know about things you've had to write for school, and how sometimes you kind of elaborate on things to kind of stretch the word count. And I had a teacher long ago that used to read those things, and she would actually write BS on whenever she realized that there was redundancies in order to stretch word count. And this is what this is about. It's world history according to student bloopers. This was actually a collaboration. And before I read this, fair warning to anyone who's a history scholar, it is going to drive you insane. So please put the "that's not right" on the shelf for the next few minutes, because you will go out of your mind if you don't take it in the spirit with it just being read. One of the fringe benefits of being an English or history teacher is receiving the occasional jewel of a student blooper and an essay. I have pasted together the following history of the world from certifiably genuine student bloopers collected by teachers throughout the United States from 8th grade through college level. Read carefully and you will learn a lot. The first sentence already hurts my soul. The inhabitants of Egypt were called mummies. Yeah. They lived in the Sahara Desert and traveled by camelot. The climate of the Sahara is such that the inhabitants have to live elsewhere, so certain areas of the desert are cultivated by irritation. That is true. They are fairly irritated in order to do. They have to be fairly irritated to live in the desert. Uh, the Egyptians built the pyramids in the shape of a huge triangular cube. Remember that. The pyramids are a range of mountains between France and Spain. This kills me every time I read this. The Bible is full of interesting caricatures. And I'm reading this as it's written, by the way. I'm not screwing this up. This is how it's written. In the first book of the Bible, Genesis, that's the Irish version, Adam and Eve were created from an apple tree. If you're drunk on Guinness, that could be the truth. One of the children, Cain, asked, am I my brother's son? God asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac on Mount Montezuma. Jacob, son of Isaac, stole his brother's birthmark. Jacob was a patriarch who brought up his 12 sons to be patriarchs, but they did not take to it. One of Jacob's sons, Joseph, gave refuge to the Israelites. Pharaoh forced the Hebrew slaves to make bread without straw. Moses led them to the Red Sea, where they made unleavened bread, which is bread made without any ingredients. Afterwards, Moses went upon the Mount Sinai to get the Ten Commandments. David was a Hebrew king skilled at playing the lyre, L-I-A-R. He fought with the philatelists, them stamp collectors, boy, a race of people who lived in biblical times. Solomon, one of David's sons, had 500 wives and 500 porcupines. Now that's a joke in and of itself right there. Without the Greeks, we wouldn't have history. I mean, the Romans wouldn't have culture. So, The Greeks invented 3 kinds of columns: Corinthian, Doric, and Ironic. They also had myths. A myth is a female moth. One myth says that the mother of Achilles dipped him in the river Styx until they became intolerable. I mean, to read some of the things about Achilles, he was kind of intolerable. Achilles appears in the Iliad by Homer. Homer also wrote the Odyssey, along with David Bowie. I'm just kidding. I put that one in myself. In which Penelope was the last hardship that Ulysses endured on his journey. I can't read that without laughing, because Just the way it's phrased. Actually, Homer was not written by Homer, but by another man of that name. Okay, let me clarify that last statement by saying this. It is speculated, very much like Shakespeare, that Homer had a ghostwriter in some cases, and his work was completed by someone else. It is also theorized that Shakespeare had a ghostwriter as well. Um, Socrates was a famous Greek teacher who went around giving people advice. They killed him. Socrates died from an overdose of wedlock. I mean, in the Olympic Games, Greeks ran races, jumped, hurled the biscuits, and threw the Java. See, when you hurl biscuits, you gotta throw the coffee too, because you can't eat the biscuits without the coffee. I'm just saying. The reward to the victor was a coral wreath. Ow. Ow. The government of Athens was democratic because the people took the law into their own hands. That literally made me laugh. I'm not gonna lie to you. There were no wars in Greece as the mountains were so high that they couldn't climb over to see what their neighbors were doing. That is a bullshit line if there ever was one. When they fought the Parisians, not the Persians, the Parisians, the Greeks were outnumbered because the Parisians had more men. Eventually, the Romans conquered the Greeks. God dang. I thought they were depressed. Like I said, I really, as it's written, I promise. History called people Romans because they never stayed in one place for very long. At Roman banquets, the guests wore garlic in their hair. Oh, good lord. Julius Caesar extinguished himself on the battlefields of Gaul. The Ides of March killed him because they thought he was going to be made king. And there's part truth and part misunderstanding there. Nero was a cruel tyranny who would torture his poor subjects by playing the fiddle to them. Like they used to say, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and when it's something like this, that's where this comes in. Then came the Middle Ages. King Alfred conquered the Danes. King Arthur lived in the age of chivalry. Yeah, it was fucking cold in that armor, just saying. King Harled mustered his troops before the Battle of Hastings. I'm reading it as it's written. Joan of Arc was canonized Cannonized by George Bernard Shaw, and the victims of the Black Death grew boobs on their necks. Finally, the Magna Carta provided that no free man should be hanged twice for the same offense. In medieval times, most of the people were illiterate. Not illiterate, alliterate, which is completely two different things. The greatest writer of the time was Chaucer, who wrote many poems and verse and also wrote literature. Another tale tells of William Tell, who shot an arrow through an apple while standing on his son's head. Okay. Just the physics of some of these sentences is just hilarious. The Renaissance was an age in which more individuals felt the value of their human being. Ayo. Martin Luther was nailed to the church door at Wittenberg for selling papal indulgences. He died a horrible death, being excommunicated by a bull. It was the painter Donatello's interest in the female nude that made him the father of the Renaissance. Ayo. That Donatello got around, yo. It was an age of great inventions and discoveries. Gutenberg invented the Bible. Don't tell the Christians that. Sir Walter Raleigh is a historical figure because he invented cigarettes. Really. Another important invention was the circulation of blood. I mean, up to that point, nobody knew how it should happen. Sir Francis Drake circumcised the world with a 100-foot clipper. Yo. The government of England was a limited mockery, and it still is. Henry VIII found walking difficult because he had an abyss on his knee. I mean, that's why he got in trouble. That's why he was divorced so many times. Yo. Queen Elizabeth was the Virgin Queen. As a queen, she was a success. Yay. When Elizabeth exposed herself before her troops, they all shouted, hurrah! I'm sure they did. Then her navy went out and defeated the Spanish armadillo. The greatest writer of the Renaissance was William Shakespeare. Shakespeare never made much money and was famous only because of his plays. That's also kind of true, actually. He lived in Windsor with his married wives, writing tragedies, comedies, and errors. In one of Shakespeare's famous plays, Hamlet rations out his situation by relieving himself in a long soliloquy. So usually when I have to go, that's what I do too. In another, Lady Macbeth tries to convince Macbeth to kill the king by attacking his manhood. Hey yo. Romeo and Juliet are an example of a heroic couplet. Writing at the same time as Shakespeare was Miguel Cervantes. Actually, much later, actually. He wrote Don Quixote. And the next great author was John Milton. Milton wrote Paradise Lost, then his wife dies, and he wrote Paradise Regained. Hey, yo. I wish I was making this up. I'm not, though. During the Renaissance, America began. Yes, we began. We just, there it was. Christopher Columbus was a great navigator who discovered America while cursing about the Atlantic. I mean, that's not entirely untrue. I mean, he didn't discover America, but I'm sure he cursed about the Atlantic quite a bit. His ships were called the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Fe. Oh, boy. Later, the Pilgrims crossed the ocean, and this was called the Pilgrim's Progress. When they landed at Plymouth Rock, they were greeted by Indians. By the way, this was written years ago. Sorry if it's not PC. Who came down the hill rolling their hoop. There was hoops before them. That sentence is just all kinds of fucked up. The Indian squaws carried porpoises on their backs. Many of the Indian heroes were killed along with their cabooses, which proved to be very fatal to them. The winter of 1620 was a hard one for the settlers. Many people died and many babies were born. Captain John Smith was responsible for all of this. Ayo. One of the causes of the Revolutionary Wars was the English put tax in their tea. I mean, that could really start some shit. I'm not gonna lie. Also, the colonists would send their parcels through the post without stamps. I mean, there's a reason why people call it going postal. During the war, Redcoats and Paul Revere was throwing balls over stone walls. The dogs were barking, the peacocks crowing. Finally, the colonists won the war and no longer had to pay for the taxis. Delegates from the original 13 states formed the contended Congress. They were anything but contended. That was the problem. Thomas Jefferson, a virgin, and Benjamin Franklin, who wasn't one, I added that, were two singers of the Declaration of Independence. Franklin had gone to Boston carrying all his clothes in his pocket and a loaf of bread under each arm. He invented electricity by rubbing cats backwards and declared, "A horse divided against itself cannot stand." Franklin died in 1790 and is still dead, unlike Elvis. I add shit sometimes in this too. Oh my gosh. This is so fucking funny. George Washington married Martha Curtis and in due time became the father of our country. Hey, yo. Then the Constitution of the United States was adopted to secure domestic hostility. Yes. Yes, 100 times yes. The funny thing about it is that sentence is wrong, but it's so true all at the same time. Under the Constitution, the people enjoyed the right to keep bear arms. Well, there you go. Abraham Lincoln became America's greatest president. Lincoln's mother died in infancy, and he was born in a log cabin which he built with his own hands. Huh? When Lincoln was president, he wore only a tall silk hat. He said, "In onion there is strength." Whew. Abraham Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address while traveling from Washington to Gettysburg on the back of an envelope. He also signed the Emasculation Proclamation and the 14th Amendment to give the ex-citizenship. But the Ku Klux Klan would torture and lynch and other innocent victims. That is true. Now that part's true. They spelled it all wrong, but it was true. On the night of the April 14th, 1865, Lincoln went to the theater and got shot in the seat by one of the actors in a moving picture show. The believed assassinator is how it's spelled, was John Wilkes Booth, a supposedly insane actor. This ruined Booth's career. You think? Getting arrested and shit, that guy puts a damper on shit. Meanwhile, in Europe, the Enlightenment was a reasonable time. Voltaire invented electricity and also wrote a book called Candide. He wrote a book called Candide, by the way. Gravity was invented by Isaac Walton. It is chiefly noticeable in the autumn when the apples are falling off the trees. Somebody was seriously bulking up that paragraph. Bach was the most famous composer in the world, and so was Handel. Handel was half German, half Italian, and half English. He was very large. Another stretch. Bach died from 1750 to the present. Yay! Unlike Elvis, like I said. Beethoven wrote music even though he was deaf. He was so deaf he wrote loud music. He took long walks in the forest even when everyone was calling for him. Beethoven expired in 1827 and later died for this. Yes. France was in a very serious state. The French Revolution was accomplished before it happened. The Marseillaise was a theme song of the French Revolution that catapulted into Napoleon. During the Napoleonic Wars, the crowned heads of Europe were trembling in their shoes. That is not entirely untrue. Then the Spanish guerrillas came down from the hills and nipped at Napoleon's flanks. Napoleon became ill with bladder problems and was very tense and unrestrained. He wanted the heir to inherit his power, but since Josephine was a baroness, she couldn't bear many children. The sun never set on the British Empire because the British Empire is in the east and the sun sets in the west. Just length of sentence. Queen Victoria was the longest queen. She sat on a throne for 63 years. God damn. Ow. Her reclining years, and finally the end of her life were exemplary of a great personality. Her death was the final event which ended her reign. I would think so. The 19th century was a time of many great inventions and thoughts. The invention of the steamboat caused a network of rivers to spring up. Cyrus McCormick invented the McCormick Raper, which did the work of 100 men. Eyo. Samuel Morse invented a code for telepathy. Louis Pasteur discovered a cure for rabbis. Charles Darwin was a naturalist who wrote Origin of the Species. I like to know what book you were downloading. Madman Curie discovered radium, and Karl Marx became one of the Marx brothers. The First World War, caused by the assignation of the Archduke by a serf, ushered in a new era in the annals of human history. Oh my gosh. But that was the stuff that we actually read, and uh and the guy's got a lot of stuff posted and stuff, but it's actually funny. But I'm actually going to post that in my links and stuff, um, for anybody who would like to go back and read that, because it's just insane. Um, Let me take a quick drink here. And with that, and a very short and somewhat humorous turn, ends the Christmas reading for 2025 and Storytime with Sid for 2025. Because I will not be back to do more until after the new year. But now, when the new year comes in, we'll be starting back with the Dresden Files for the next book, I do believe. And also, we're starting a brand new omnibus called Wizard by Trade. It contains 2 books. I do believe that's how it goes, because I'm making sure. Yes. It has Summer Night and Death Masks in it. It's quite, actually, fairly lengthy, actually. Um, Summer Night is the next book. It is actually 30... Oh, excuse me, 34 chapters, give or take. So, and Summer Night and Death Masks will be what we'll be reading in the next few months, and then we'll be switching to the next one that will have Blood Rights and Deadbeat. So we're progressing along, and apparently there's actually more books than what I own. So I'm gonna have to put some Jim Butcher books on my wish list somehow. So I got to figure out what I have and what I don't have, and we'll see. But that's going to be it for Storytime with Sid. I appreciate y'all hanging out and listening. For those of you on Twitch, I'm going to take a brief break and let the dog go loose. It's been long enough to where it should be safe for her to get around and about. I'll probably be taking her out at some point as well. But the brief break is just going to be for door opening and that kind of thing. We're going to get into some Dreamlight Valley here just in a few moments. Excuse me. I laugh so hard it just causes everything to go heh. But I appreciate y'all enjoying my reading streams, and for those of you watching, listening this on YouTube, I appreciate your patronage. And hopefully in the coming year, I will also be streaming to YouTube as well simultaneously. I got to figure out how to do that between now and then. So that's going to be the big jump, big change that's happening in the stream. So, excuse me again, my goodness. Um, but I appreciate everybody lurking. I hope everybody's having a great Wednesday. And I'll be back in 2 and 2 with some Dreamlight Valley. Check it in.